Hello everyone. For today's video, we will check the voltage and the resistance of the Zotac GTX 1050 Ti. This is the PCB or the motherboard of the Zotac GTX 1050 Ti. So this is the GPU core of this card. It uses the GP107 chip. And then it has 4 GB of VRAM chips. Now, what voltages and resistance we will measure in this card? First, we will measure this coil. So this coil is for the memory or the VMEM. And then these coils are for the GPU core. Next, this coil is for the PEX rail. And then this coil is for the 1.8 volts. And this one is for the 12 volts. And this LDO is for 5 volts. This one is for the PWM IC for the core or the GPU core. Now let's take a look at the back of the GPU. So this LDO is for 5 volts too. This IC is for the BIOS. Now let's go back to the front side of the motherboard. I will now show you what voltages you might see in this card. This VMEM coil should have 1.5 volts. And then the GPU core should have at least 0.750 volts. All those 3 coils, if you measured, should have 0.750 volts. Next, this coil should have 1.8 volts. And then this coil at the bottom should have 12 volts. And lastly, this coil for the PEX rail should have 1 volt. And this LDO should have 5 volts. Now let's take a look at the back again of the GPU. In here, there is another LDO which is 5 volts. Now let's check for the resistance of these rails. Let's first check the 1.5 volts rails. So the VMEM rails should have 30 ohms above, and then the GPU core resistance should have 1 ohms or below. The 1.8 volts should have 2.4 kilo ohms or above. Next, the 12 volts rail should have at least 4 kilo ohms above. And this specs rail should have around 90 ohms or above. And this 5 volts should have 512 ohms above. Same at the back, this 5 volts should have 512 ohms or above. So these are the voltages and resistance of the Zotac GTX 1050 Ti. Thank you very much.